Have you ever babysat for a child who seemed to have an invisible friend? This tale begins with a young woman named Sarah, a college student who occasionally babysat for extra cash. One evening she was hired to watch over a precocious 6-year-old boy named Tommy. Tommy had a vivid imagination, often talking and laughing with his invisible friend, whom he affectionately named Max. At first, Sarah dismissed it as a harmless, childlike fantasy. As the night unfurled, Tommy and his unseen companion sat at the dinner table, engaging in deep conversation over a meal of macaroni and cheese. The child's laughter filled the room, and Sarah could swear she heard a second, fainter echo of laughter, but she attributed it to the creaking house or maybe even her own nerves. The evening pressed on, and Tommy insisted that Max was real, not just a figment of his imagination. Sarah, with a smile, played along, finding the boy's insistence charming. However, the charm swiftly evaporated when she witnessed a spoon, laden with macaroni, lift off the table, seemingly by itself, and hover in the air. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the spoon move, suspended in mid-air before it returned to the plate. She tried to rationalize, attributing it to some trick of the light or a gust of wind, but the windows were closed and the room was still. As the night wore on, the house seemed to grow colder and the shadows deeper. Sarah felt an unseen presence lurking just out of sight. The light bulbs flickered, the floorboards creaked, and she could hear whispers, too faint to decipher, echoing through the house. The night wore on, and Sarah was left to wonder just who or what she was sharing the house with. The laughter, the spoon, the whispers, were they all the work of a child's imagination? Or was there something more, something unseen but very much present, lurking within the shadows? But what if this invisible friend wasn't so imaginary after all? What would you do if you received a chilling phone call while babysitting? Picture this: a typical Friday night, a pair of innocent children tucked into their beds, and you, their unsuspecting babysitter, making the most of the quiet evening. That's when the unsettling jingle of the home's landline echoes in the silence. An unexpected call, an unexpected voice. On the other end of the line, a voice, distorted and unidentifiable, whispered an eerie message into your ear. A message that sent chills down your spine and made your heart race. "We are watching them," they said. "The children, we are watching the children." Your mind raced, trying to make sense of the cryptic words. Was this some sort of sick prank? A friend playing a trick? Or was this a genuine threat? The more you thought about it, the more your heart pounded in your chest, and the more the walls of the cozy suburban home seemed to close in around you. Despite the fear, you managed to keep your wits about you. You told yourself it was just a prank, that someone was just trying to scare you. After all, why would anyone want to harm two innocent children? But the voice, the words, they stuck with you, echoing in your mind, chilling you to your very core. You tried to shake off the fear, tried to laugh it off. You hung up the phone, hoping that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. The phone rang again, and again. Each time, the same chilling message, the same distorted voice. Each time, the fear grew, the terror becoming more real. Your mind began to spin. You checked on the children, their peaceful slumber, a stark contrast to the terror you were experiencing. You thought about calling the police, but what would you say? That someone was prank calling you? That you were scared? You didn't want to seem paranoid, so you didn't. But the calls kept coming. The voice kept whispering, and the fear kept growing. In a desperate attempt to stop the calls, to stop the fear, you decided to trace the call. Maybe if you knew where it was coming from, you could confront the prankster, put an end to the terror, and so, with trembling hands, you traced the call. The result was more horrifying than you could have ever imagined. The call, the voice, the threat, it wasn't coming from outside. It wasn't a distant prankster, a bored teenager, or a cruel friend. No, the call was coming from inside the house. The threat was coming from within the very walls that were supposed to protect you and the children. The realization hit you like a punch in the gut, a cold wave of terror washing over you. Your heart pounded in your chest, your palms sweated, and your breath hitched in your throat. The house, once a symbol of safety and comfort, now felt like a trap, a cage, a nightmare. The children were upstairs, asleep, vulnerable. The caller was in the house. The threat was real, and you were the only thing standing between them and an unknown danger. With newfound determination, you dialed 911, your voice shaking as you relayed the horrifying situation. As you waited for help to arrive, you checked on the children again, reassured them, comforted them, even as your own fear threatened to consume you. The police arrived, searched the house, but found no one. No caller, no intruder, just you, the children, and a house that suddenly felt a lot less like a home. The call stopped, The fear subsided, but the memory, the terror, it lingered. Each ring of a phone, each shadow in a corner, each creak of a floorboard, a haunting reminder of the night you received a chilling phone call while babysitting. Imagine the terror of realizing the threat was coming from inside the house. Have you ever encountered a toy that seemed alive? Let's delve into a tale that might make you reconsider the innocence of those plastic playthings. This is the story of a young woman named Mary Ann, a college student who took a babysitting job to earn some extra cash. The job seemed simple enough, babysitting a 6-year-old girl named Lily. Lily was a quiet child with an uncanny attachment to her doll, a porcelain figure with a lace dress and glassy blue eyes. This doll, which Lily lovingly called Missy, was always by her side, whether during playtime or bedtime. Mary Ann's first encounter with the doll was unremarkable, a mere toy in the hands of a child. But as the day turned into night, the doll began to appear less benign. Mary Ann would find Missy in places where Lily hadn't been, like the kitchen counter or the living room couch. Each time, Mary Ann assumed she had simply misplaced it, attributing the anomaly to her preoccupied mind. But as the night wore on, Mary Ann couldn't shake off a peculiar feeling. She felt watched, an uneasy sensation that sent chills down her spine. Every time she glanced at Missy, the doll's glassy blue eyes seemed to follow her, creating a sense of unease that grew with every passing hour. Mary Ann tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination running wild, but the feeling of being watched was relentless. The defining moment came when Mary Ann tucked Lily into bed, with Missy seated next to the sleeping child. Mary Ann left the room, only to return a few minutes later to find Missy on the opposite side of the bed. This time there was no logically explaining it away. Lily was fast asleep and Mary Ann had been the only other person in the house. The realization sent a jolt of fear through Mary Ann. She felt her heart pounding in her chest as she picked up the doll and examined it. It was just a doll, a lifeless toy, yet it seemed to radiate an ominous presence. Mary Ann decided to place Missy in the living room, far away from the child's bedroom, hoping that distance would alleviate her growing anxiety. But as the night grew darker, so did Mary Ann's fear. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, feeling the weight of unseen eyes on her. The house creaked and groaned, each sound amplified by the silence of the night. Mary Ann tried to distract herself with a book, but the words blurred together, her mind consumed by the unsettling events of the night. Eventually, sleep overcame her, and Mary Ann drifted off on the living room couch. But her peace was short-lived. She woke up with a start, the eerie silence of the house disrupted by a soft, rhythmic tapping. It was coming from Lily's room. With a sinking feeling in her gut, Mary Ann hesitantly made her way towards the child's room. The door creaked open, revealing Lily sleeping peacefully. But what caught Mary Ann's attention was Missy, the doll, seated next to Lily just like before. The sight was too much for Mary Ann. Her vision blurred, her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor, unconscious. The next thing Mary Ann knew, she was waking up in a hospital bed. The doctors said she had suffered from a severe panic attack. As for how she was found, it was Lily who had woken up and found Mary Ann unconscious in her room. But the most chilling detail was what Lily mentioned casually to the doctors. That Missy, her doll, had been with Mary Ann all night, watching over her. So, what do we make of this story? Was it just a figment of Mary Ann's overactive imagination, or was there something more sinister at play? Could it be that Missy, the doll, was more than just a toy? It's a chilling thought, isn't it? What if the harmless toys we play with aren't so harmless after all? So, what became of our babysitters and their chilling encounters? Let's take a moment to revisit our sitters and their harrowing experiences. There are lessons to be learned and chilling reminders in each tale echoing long after the lights are turned on. Our first babysitter, the one who had the unsettling run-in with the unseen entity, made a swift and definitive decision in the aftermath of her experience. She quit her job, a choice not made lightly, and never returned to that ominously quiet house on the hill. It seems that the unseen had made a lasting impression, an invisible scar that was too much for her to bear. Then there was the second babysitter, the brave soul who faced off against the terrifying voice on the other end of the phone. She managed to protect the children, her courage and quick thinking ensuring their safety until the police arrived. She became a beacon of strength, a testament to the power of resilience in the face of the unknown. Her story is a stark reminder that not all monsters lurk in the shadows. Some have the audacity to dial your number. Finally, we revisit the third babysitter, the one who encountered the sinister doll. She was found unconscious, her memory of the night's events a dark, impenetrable fog. The doll, with its dead-eyed stare and malevolent presence, had left a chilling impact. This babysitter, having lost several hours to an unexplained unconsciousness, was left with more questions than answers. Her story is a jarring illustration of how the uncanny can infiltrate the most mundane of settings, turning the familiar into the utterly terrifying. And there you have it, 3 babysitters, 3 chilling encounters. Each of their stories serves as a stark reminder of the unexplainable, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. Next time you think about babysitting, remember, not all horror stories happen on the big screen. Some might just be waiting for you at your next babysitting gig.